Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're discussing the top pros and cons of living here in the state of Maryland. So let's jump right into it. Welcome back to the Living in Maryland channel, where we discuss all things living here in the great state of Maryland. So if that's the kind of information that you are looking for, then you are definitely in the right spot, and we really appreciate you being here. And if you are thinking about making a move here to the state of Maryland, if you're wondering whether purchasing a home is the right decision, we absolutely love helping out in any way possible. So however you feel comfortable reaching out, if you'd like to have a conversation about that and see how we may be able to assist, feel free to reach out anytime, days, nights, and weekends. We've got your back when moving here to the great state of Maryland. All right, so first off, we're gonna start off with some pros of living in Maryland. Now, for me, coming from Southern California, the first one that I wanna mention is just that it's close to so many different things. And this is something that I really appreciate because it was something that wasn't really as accessible or doable growing up in Southern California. So being here and being close to so many different things, being able to do, a quick day trip to Baltimore or to DC, which is just about 30 to 45 minutes from most parts of Central Maryland, is amazing. Going to Ocean City and having access to beaches on the Eastern Shore and even parts of Southern Delaware is something that's amazing. So, most people you run into here are gonna do some sort of annual summer trip to the Eastern Shore to go to the beach. So that's something that's very doable and within reach here in Maryland. And then having access to kind of some mountains here in Maryland. So going out to Deep Creek in Western Maryland, it's about 2.5 hours away from Greater Baltimore, and having access to all the hiking and the trails and the activities. You can snowboard, ski, and then they've got a large lake where you can do all types of water activities. So having so much nearby is something that's absolutely amazing. Also having West Virginia not too far away, there's just some beautiful things to do and to see out there. So that's been one of the most enjoyable things for me living out here. All right, next I want to mention the overall economy and then also specifically the job market. So we're very lucky out here to have a very strong foundation of our job market being in federal work and then all the contracting work that stems from that. And then we've got a pretty huge medical sector. So you've got Walter Reed Medical Center down in greater DC, but actually the Montgomery County part of Maryland. And then you also have Johns Hopkins in greater Baltimore, and then all the kind of the satellite and all the things that stem from that all throughout Central Maryland and all throughout Maryland. So just all the jobs and all the things that stem from that really is the foundation of Maryland's economy here. You've got the Port of Baltimore, which is a huge employer. You've got Fort Meade right in Central Maryland, which is Maryland's largest employer with over 50,000 employees. So it just seems like, even throughout a little bit harder times historically, Maryland just tends to do a little better. Nowhere is recession proof, but Maryland tends to do a little better with that strong foundation of such solid work through government work and through the medical sector and other growing sectors within the economy here in Maryland. And then something I did want to mention in relation to this as well is what Maryland's population growth rate is. So since 2010, Maryland has had an average of 8% growth rate. This is something that I wanted to mention because when you look at top states in the country, they're ranging anywhere from 15 to 22%, which is a huge number. And a lot of that's probably going to be due to COVID and kind of relocation, because of that. But something that I think is important because it's a very steady, solid number where Maryland is growing, but not at a rapid pace that might bring on, growing pains. Things like a ton of construction, possible overbuilding of homes, especially going into, potentially uncertain times with the economy. So something to keep in mind too, that Maryland is growing, but growing at a consistent, steady pace, and something to kind of keep in mind as well. All right, next is all the outdoor activities to do here in Maryland, specifically the parks and the state parks here in Maryland. So I feel like, at least in my experience, every time I turn around or everywhere I'm going, I seem to notice some sort of state park or a park. So this has just been really fun because we love getting outside, we love going on hikes and being active. So that is something that if you enjoy getting out and doing those sorts of things, you are gonna find those opportunities all over the state of Maryland. So wherever you're going, be sure to hop online and kind of check out what's gonna be near you in that neighborhood. Feel free to reach out to me also. I've spent a lot of time going out to these various state parks and different areas, so I'm always willing to give you my thoughts and some suggestions as well. All right, next pro is going to be that Maryland experiences all four seasons. Now, for some of you, or a lot of you, maybe this is something that you've had most or all of your life. For me, coming from the West Coast, it was definitely not that way. We didn't get to experience all four seasons. So having, the fall and the spring, those are my two favorite seasons, and really getting to experience those here in Maryland is something that I've really, really enjoyed. So you will see it all here in Maryland, and that's definitely something to be prepared for. All right, next item I want to mention is the traffic. Now, depending on what part of Maryland you are in, this could be a little bit of a pro, this could definitely be a con. So I want to mention it kind of as I transition from pros into cons. Now, when you spend more time within central Maryland, and then as you get closer to Baltimore, you will notice that traffic may not nearly be as bad as when you are down closer to DC and dealing with 495, which is DC's beltway. So if you are in DC, it's going to be, a lot more traffic. So it can be fairly unpredictable. It could be 7 days a week, and just at totally random times. There's just a lot of congestion going on down there, and just a lot more heavy population. So you're going to notice more traffic down there. But as you get into central Maryland, so northern parts of Anne Arundel County, North Montgomery County, and then into Howard County and parts of Baltimore County, you're going to notice that traffic definitely go down. You're not going to notice really traffic much on weekends. You're going to notice traffic be really more specific to, kind of that typical rush hour time. So, 7 to 9 in the morning, and then really, maybe 3:30 to 5:30 or 6 in the evening. And then other than that, it flows very well. So that was something for me coming from Southern California. I was used to traffic all the time for no reason. So coming here, to me, traffic has been, pretty much a pro, because the parts of Maryland that I'm in a lot, we just don't have a ton of constant traffic, 7 days a week, random times, stuff like that. So, just depending on what your experience is, what you're coming from, you may experience something different here. All right, next we're going to continue and move on with cons, and next I'm going to mention winter. So this is definitely something where I feel like when the first snow comes, it's kind of fun, it's cool, but then as you move into January, February, it's just like, oh my gosh, can we just get to spring already? So, but this is definitely something to be prepared for depending on where you're coming from. But we are sitting here end of January 2023, and we have had zero snow yet. So Maryland is very unpredictable. Once you get here and start talking to people, it's kind of something that's known far and wide here, where you just never know what's coming. I mean, you could have a 70-degree day in March, you can have a day where it's 15 degrees. It's just so unpredictable. So, kind of being prepared for that, and, but it will get cold every single year. So I was looking at the weather heading into early February. We're going to have a few lows of around 10 to 12 degrees on a few nights, and then some of the lows jump up into 35 and into the high 30s. So it's just kind of all over the map, but being prepared for the cold for sure. And then snow. A lot of times, we will definitely get it each year. But a lot of times it doesn't stick around very long, because a lot of those days coming after the snow are going to warm up into the 40s, maybe into the low 50s, and that snow is just going to melt away, and it's just not going to be around very long. But Maryland is very, very good of getting out, being proactive with salting roads. It doesn't really slow us down too much. So just being prepared for the cold, I would say, is probably the best thing to expect for winter. All right, next is going to be taxes. So just being prepared that Maryland is a fairly heavily taxed state is something that will be helpful for you if you are looking to move here. Now, we do get taxed as far as state income tax. Now, that's broken down into the county that you live in, and then also, of course, just being taxed by the state of Maryland. They're bundled together and paid as state income tax. But being aware of what county you're living in and what that rate may be is going to be helpful. And a lot of them are pretty close, so it's not going to be a huge difference, but just kind of being aware that that's how it works as well. Now, we also have transfer taxes when you're buying a piece of real estate. That can add up pretty quickly. It's usually over 1% of the purchase price of the home that you're buying, so being aware of that, that's going to be part of your closing costs. We've got a flat 6% sales tax. So across the board in the state of Maryland, it's not localized or anything like that. It's going to be what you can expect there. And then property taxes. So I'm going to transition with this into the overall cost of housing, which is also very expensive here in Maryland. So just being prepared for that. Now, our property tax rate itself is not astronomical. It's a little over 1% typically in most parts of Maryland, but the values in Maryland have been climbing up, and the average cost of a home is pretty expensive here. So the property taxes are going to start getting up there. So let's just say, for an example, you're looking at a $500,000 home here in the state of Maryland. Property taxes are probably going to be around $6,000 a year on that piece of property. Now back to cost of housing. This is something that I don't like to generalize at the state level just because it can range so much. So depending on what part of Maryland you're going to be in, it can vary greatly. So if you are looking in, parts of Montgomery County, certain parts of, maybe PG County where, you're bordering DC, it can be very, very expensive. The average, single family home can be, over $700,000-800,000. So, but when you go up to Baltimore, and as you get closer to Baltimore, that can, definitely go down, especially as you get north of Baltimore. So depending on what part you're in, this can vary greatly. So I don't like to throw an average out because it can be very misleading. So depending on what part you're coming to, make sure to, look more into that specific market because it can vary greatly depending on the part of Maryland that you're in. All right, and then the last con that I have for you is that you cannot buy alcohol in grocery stores here in Maryland. Now that may not sound that annoying, but it is pretty annoying, especially for me coming from an area where I could just go to Costco, I could go to Walmart, I could do my grocery shopping, and then I could also just grab beer, wine, whatever I was looking to purchase. Now it has to be a separate trip, and it just kind of turns into a little more effort and definitely a little more work. So something to be prepared for depending on where you're coming from. That Maryland's got a little bit of, some weird laws when it comes to alcohol. So you're gonna have to make a separate trip to a liquor store here in Maryland if you wanna get any of that alcohol. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you ever have any questions about moving here to Maryland, please feel free to reach out or shoot a comment below, and we will see you at the next video.